Oops. Oops. Okay. Sweet. Computer screen up. Alrighty. What is going on, everybody? This is, of course, your boy Bernie here, along with Pete.
Yo, what's up, guys?
And today, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously, as you can tell by the title, we're going to really talk about the trades that have gone on the last 10 years and really determine what were some of the best, what were some of the worst, and really kind of dissect trades in the last couple of years. I think we spawned this from a topic last week when we talked about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And just kind of trying to figure out like what trades in the last 10 years more so like have been the best, what have been the worst, because there's been some really good ones, and for other teams there's been some pretty bad ones, and so we're going to definitely talk about that. And then we're also going to talk about the MVP race. I feel like it is getting a little tighter than I think a lot of people are realizing. I think a lot of people thought that Luka had it in the bag, thought that Jokic might have had it in the bag once again, or even Giannis. But as you guys can see on the screen, Mr. JT has kind of entered himself in the chat and is kind of showing you why he is currently, a big leader in this MVP race. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the power rankings. I think there's a lot of teams that have kind of moved up the power rankings, teams that have really stepped up their game. One team in particular, not to call anything out, but the Lakers, I feel like, have played really well this last couple of weeks. And so I know that that's kind of led to a lot of Laker hate simmering down just a bit. And all the nicknames for Westbrook and Anthony Davis and LeBron James have kind of subsided for now. Obviously, their schedule gets tougher from here, but yeah, we're excited. And Pete, it's been a long week for both of us, work wise, and then just watching the games and things like that. So what was, I guess, before we kind of start the show, what do you feel like was kind of some of the biggest takeaways from this past week or two? Maybe this past week, since we did a stream last week. What was your biggest takeaway from the past week in terms of just NBA in general?
The one thing that keeps coming to my mind, and we've been talking about this the whole season, is really like the parity in the league is insane. Like how close most of these teams are in terms of quality. Just night in, night out. I mean, you even have teams that are like, there's a couple teams I think that are just clearly a step below everybody, and it's mostly because of injuries. Like I would say Detroit is one, obviously. I think they have the worst record in the league.
Yeah.
That's mostly injuries. I would attribute that to, but also like Houston. Those are really the only two teams that are just clearly worse than everybody else. Besides that, most teams can compete night in, night out, which I think is really interesting. I think that's exactly what Adam Silver and the NBA have been angling towards for years now. And we'll see if it can continue, because based on the way that these teams are constructed, we've talked about another thing we've talked about a lot is the death of the super team this season in the last few years, and I think it just shows, man, the quality of some of these squads is really impressive. And seeing how these coaches have these guys playing, like, Joe Mazzulla with the Celtics is a good one. I mean, the way he has those dudes competing night in, night out is really, really impressive. And there's not even a moment where it looks like they're ever going to take their foot off the gas, so to speak. But there's a lot of teams like that. So it's really nice to see, man. I'm loving it. The NBA I think it's more fun night in, night out right now than it's probably ever been. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think we've talked about it before, and I think we'll continue to kind of mention it on the channel. It's just like the fact that there's been a lot of teams playing like team basketball. I think that's the biggest takeaway from, I think the last couple of months kind of leading into this year is that, before, like you said, last 10 years ago, it was just a one-man team. It was like if you had that one superstar, you were chilling, you were great. Like no one could stop you. But now with the way that the role players have really expanded and really been given opportunities, which I feel like is great, it just allows them to be a much better basketball team. You can clearly see that guys like Jason Tatum are getting the ball more because they're moving it to their role players. Like I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. This kind of leads back to some discussions from my basketball team in general that we've had over the past week. It's kind of the same thing. It's like the ball will always gravitate towards the best player if you move it around, if you keep like looking for your guys. because at the end of the day, you're going to get the ball in much better opportunities. I mean, that's just the way basketball is with the chess pieces. I mean, that's the reason why a guy like Joe Mazzulla, a lot of people question, like, oh, is he going to be better than Udoka? Is he going to really fill in Udoka's shoes? And he's clearly shown that he can. And he clearly has shown that his style of play is probably one of the best offenses in the NBA currently. And you can clearly see that that's the reason why he won Coach of the Month, and that's the reason why Jason Tatum won Player of the Month, is because of that consistency and because of the way that the Celtics have played. And before it used to be kind of like a your turn, my turn with him and Jaylen Brown, and Jaylen Brown is starting to, not gonna say he's fully in the top 5 conversation for MVP, but I think he's starting to creep into the conversation just a little bit. Maybe that's just a little bias of me, but I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me, like, so far. Other than, like, Luka's been playing phenomenal, but at the end of the day, I think the Mavericks, and we've talked about it before with you, Brad, and I in our chat, like, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to, like, Mark Cuban and just, like, really getting this guy some help.
Construction. Yeah, and I think this is probably a good time to just go right into the MVP conversation. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. It's already on my screen.
Good reason to do it. So let's start. You want to just move our way down that list? What is that list?
This is
Bleacher Report or NBA?
No, this is NBA. So this is the NBA.com Kia MVP ladder. So the NBA usually puts out a list every week, talking about the ladder race in terms of who is at the top currently and going all the way down to 7. Usually they do the top 5 as kind of like or maybe top 4, I believe, where they do a little bit more of an in-depth analysis, and then afterwards they kind of have just like 3 or 4 players that they think are in that conversation. So clearly, as you guys can see, number 1, Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics. This is what the article goes on to say. It says Jason Tatum has shown that he was king of the court as the Prince and Princess of Wales sat courtside. Obviously, it is what it is with that stuff. Wednesday to watch him drill 8 3-pointers as part of a season-high 49 points in a win versus the Miami Heat. We also know that Jason Tatum is the youngest player to hit 900 3-pointers, so that's also awesome. But also Tatum is the 6th player in NBA history to have multiple games with 45 points or more with 10 more rebounds while committing 1 turnover or fewer, joining the companies of AD, Michael Jordan, Giannis, Kobe, and Carmelo. I know that those kind of stats are a little funky, and I think that sometimes they can be a little bit made up or skewed. We've talked about this before in terms of like
you just make up whatever you want to as far as stat line rarity is concerned nowadays.
Yeah, and last week he was ranked number 2, but if we look at the season stats so far, 31.6 points per game, 7.8 rebounds per game, and 4.5 assists per game. So again, continuing that trend of assist making and things like that. So Pete, I mean, number 1 on the list, like, do you think that's right so far, or do you think that there's another player that should be number 1?
To me, I don't think so. I mean, I'm a little biased too. JT is one of my favorite players in the league. I picked him for the MVP before this season. And I think this dude is the best player night in, night out right now. I mean, Giannis is right there. The way he's been playing since the ladder incident is insane. It's absolutely astounding. We'll talk about those other guys too. But the difference is that JT is he's right now, in my opinion, top 5 offense and defense. Mm-hmm. And I know that you could say the same about a couple of these other guys that we're going to talk about, but the difference is that they're the best team in the league, and Tatum has improved every facet of his game. I mean, year in and year out, but really this year, it seems like he was in the lab and really challenged himself to improve on the things that, people like us have always talked about him needing to improve. I mean, one of the things I think that sticks out with JT the most this season is his shot selection. I mean, it's so much better. Bernie, you as a Celtics fan have to be like jumping through the roof, seeing how much smarter his choices are. He doesn't settle for these wacky, like, as long as you could get mid-range shots, fadeaways all the time. Like, they're just smart shots, and he drives to the basket and uses his strength that he looks so much stronger too, but he just goes to the basket with such tenacity and force that there's almost nothing you can do to stop him, because
Hmm.
You don't want to overcommit that, that level of defense when he can
Yeah.
shoot threes the way he can too. So he's dominant, man. And the thing is too, he's right there for defensive player of the year as far as I'm concerned. Like he is one of the best defenders every single night, and it's impressive to see because I think one thing we talked about in the offseason with JT was how is he going to challenge himself after that finals? The
Hmm.
finals did not go his way. He didn't look very good in the finals. Jaylen Brown, there was a lot of people saying Jaylen Brown, maybe he's the guy for this team.
Yeah.
And that is clearly not the case. I mean, that is no shade at Jaylen Brown. It's just that Tatum has elevated his game even past that. So yeah, he's my pick for MVP. If you're the best player on the best team on both sides of the ball, you just got to do it. You got to be the MVP. So
Yeah.
I'm loving everything about Tatum this year. And one last thing too is his playmaking has taken a huge step up. I
Yeah.
know the assists. Is this his highest assist average he's ever had?
No, this is like second so far. I mean, it's still early in the season, but
It
last year,
still looks better. Like it looks better than it ever has. I don't know if maybe that's just me, the eye test going out of control, but I feel like it looks better. Like his passing out of double teams and tough spots instead of just like we said settling for those shots. It's just smart play all the time. There's really not very many wasted possessions with JT at this point.
yeah. I mean, what I'm loving about him too is the fact that he has increased a lot of good stats. I think effective field goal percentage is a huge one for me.
Mhm.
Being way more efficient at 56 compared to it's last year where he was at 52. Again, these are not bad numbers, but like you said, like
Crazy.
there was a situation where a lot of people felt that Jason Tatum was really good, but how good can he be? Is he really a superstar? I think was the biggest one for a lot of people, and I think he's proving a lot of the haters and really proving people like, yeah, he is a guy that can be challenging for the MVP race with
Yeah.
the scoring. And I think that as long as he continues to continue to work on his games, as long as he continues to improve the stats each and every way, field goal way up from the last couple of years, 47 compared to 45, which is his usual.
Hmm.
With taking a lot more shots. I mean, I know he's making more, and obviously taking more threes and things like that. But I think for this team to be successful, they're going to need Jason Tatum to really, go off and score the ball. I know that a lot of teams are probably going to blitz at Jason Tatum now, meaning that they're going to try to bring in two guys, basically trap him. Not more so like let's make him turn it over, but more so like let's get out of his hands and let someone else
Yeah.
try to make plays. Um, but I think at the end of the day, Jason Tatum is a smart basketball player. Like we talked about before at the beginning, like the basketball will gravitate towards him, and you can clearly see that it's gravitating towards him. Adding 4 more points to his points per game average is insane, especially because the way that I think a lot of people, like you said last year, like a lot of people were like, oh, Jason Tatum had a really good playoff series. He did really well, but didn't really show it that much in the finals. And a lot of people, like you said, were saying, oh, Jaylen Brown, he's the guy. Like, I
Yeah.
think you guys are building around the wrong person. But, I think Jason Tatum obviously is proving those haters wrong. And, I'm just excited, man. I'm excited to see where the Celtics have been going. Obviously, we'll talk about trades. I think their trade is probably up there as kind of one of the best. I know that I give
Yeah.
Danny Ainge a lot of flack for some of the
No,
moves that he made. But as we kind of will segue later into that topic. But again, I
Mhm.
think that Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, obviously Grant Williams and Robert Williams and all those guys and Marcus Smart, there has been a really good core nucleus of the Boston Celtics, and I haven't felt this way in a very long time. Probably since to be honest with you, probably maybe the Kyrie trade. In terms of like
Yeah.
that
That was Cloud
excitement,
Nine.
yeah, and so I think that kind of really elevated those guys, and maybe we had to learn from that, from like having Gordon Hayward there, having um, uh, Kyrie there. But I think one thing that gets forgotten, and I know that we're talking about the MVP race. The one thing I want to say, we should have never gotten rid of Al Horford. Al Horford was the glue guy that the Celtics missed, and the fact that
Mhm.
he left for that year really sucked. And yeah, I think that he really adds a dynamic to this team, and there's a reason why he got that contract extension. But I just wanted to mention that because I know that it was probably going to be a topic that maybe we talked about, but I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, is Al Horford going to essentially end up being like the Haslam, Udonis Haslam of the Celtics? I mean, he should be. Just keep
Yeah.
him on the bench until he's 45. Who cares? I mean, he's such a good chemistry guy. Even if he doesn't give you any minutes, why move him? I love that contract extension they got for him. What a deal. Who cares if he plays when he's 39? Who cares? He's just there as like an excellent role model for the younger dudes, and I love Horford, man. He's such a good dude. Great locker room guy. Last thing with Tatum too. Um, One of the craziest things about him jumping up 4 points per game is that his field goal attempts per game has only gone up, I think, like 0.4. Like I
Yeah.
think he was at like 20 and a half shots per game, field goals attempted per game last season, and he's only up to 21.
Yeah.
So he's averaging 4 more
Mhm.
points on basically half an extra shot per game.
Yeah.
That just speaks to the efficiency and the excellent shot selection. It's smart basketball. And I think one of the most interesting things about this, Bernie, and I'm curious what you would think about this. I really anticipate hearing more about the Ime Missoula switch and how that's impacted Tatum's game, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm curious where most of this is coming from, and I don't want to take any credit from Tatum. All of this is, to his credit for the most part. He's the
Mhm.
one putting the work in. He's the guy that was playing incredibly well when he was 19 in the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron James. He's that guy, but there's clearly a difference in his philosophy as a player.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if that's a carryover from Ime or if Missoula was how instrumental he is to that. I don't know. Like, do you have any perspective on that? What do you think, or is that kind of a wait and see type of thing?
I think it's more so like I think Udoka really helped him on the defensive end, and we saw that last year, just kind of starting to blossom a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think Missoula has kind of unlocked the offense for them. Um, I think that I think he really has really made it a lot more of a focal point to get like Jason Tatum in opportunities that suit him the best, get Jaylen Brown in opportunities that suit him the best, and I think that he's clearly created one of the best offenses um, I would say in the last couple years since the Golden State Warriors, revolutionized the offense that they have right
Mm-hmm.
now. Like, I really think that Missoula has really done a great job in that sense, and really, for a young coach, that's hard, man. Like, you're about the same, you're about
Super
the
tough.
same age as these players, maybe a couple years older, and it's one of those things where you have to think about, are they going to respect you enough as as a coach to
Mm-hmm.
say like, hey, you're about my age, like why am I listening to you? It's a weird dynamic. I know that I know that now coaches are getting younger in terms of they're starting to start in their 20s and things like that. And I'm just excited. I'm excited because it gives like coaches like me an opportunity as well. At some
That's what I was
point,
saying, Bernie. You're up next.
I hope so. Maybe NBA. I'm not sure about NBA. But I definitely would love to definitely coach at some point. Um, G League, maybe some college team, or even go over to Europe.
Next
think
Supersonics coach, Bernie.
that's Supersonics. Yeah, man.
That's what I'm talking
Next
about.
year, I got you.
What's up, Justin?
Justin, how we doing, man? Should we move on to the next MVP candidate, or just kind of?
Yeah, let's go for it. But
Okay.
credit to Missoula before we
Yeah.
get too far. Credit to him. What an excellent job that guy's doing. And before we get too far, the thing I think is so interesting about Missoula is that he really seems like he's challenging the Celtics players in a very similar way to Ime,
Yeah.
like that tough love on the
Mhm.
court. But it comes out in a I don't know how to put it because I love the way Ime did it too, but it's more like loving than Ime did almost. Like he's got that tough love, but like I
Mhm.
believe in you, you can turn this around. Like just great stuff. And I think that is probably what is, helping drive Tatum to this incredible season. I agree. But
Yeah.
let's move on.
All right. This next one is a tie for second, and it's both Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks and also Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, Luka is going Luka crazy right now. 34 points a game, 8.7 rebounds, 8.7 assists. I mean, he's just starting to put up like a little bit better than LeBron James numbers. in terms of like LeBron James averages. Like that's what it's looking like right now. He's the leading scorer for the league right now. He continues to dominate. That wonders, can't, at least to the article, it talks about, can it be sustainable? He's already turned out 51 triple doubles of his career, which is crazy to say. I there's a lot of things to talk about with Luka Doncic, but then let me also talk about Jokic as well. Jokic averaging, 23 points a game, 9.8 rebounds, 8.9 assists. This, I think, is interesting. I know that when you win the MVP multiple times, it starts to become a little bit quiet. Like you start to not remember.
It's tough. Yeah.
You start to forget about guys. I mean, LeBron James had this effect to him a while back. So I guess the question now becomes, as both of these guys are tied second according to this ladder, is it really a tie for second for both these guys, or is there a clear number two, you think, from both of these guys?
God, it's really tough. Honestly, I wouldn't put either of them at two. That's just me. I think Giannis is in second place. That's just me. I just think Giannis is too good on both sides of the ball at this point. And one of the things with Luka, it comes down to me being a bit of an old head here, but I do think team success really has to play a huge part in the MVP discussion. And there's a lot of people, including myself, because I would push back. Let's just focus on Luka for a minute.
Okay.
The team is not good around him. Like the team around him, and we were talking about this, like you mentioned, in our group chat with Brad. Should be joining us very shortly here on the chat. But this team is so reminiscent, and the way that Luka is carrying these guys is so reminiscent to LeBron's early days in Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
You have this superstar who is just electric every single night. It's almost so electric and so insane what Luka can do that it starts to lose meaning. And I think that was like we saw that with the joke Jason Kidd made about it being boring, right? And there was so much discussion about that. I don't know why we talked about that one joke as a basketball collective fandom as much as we did, but I guess it's that time of the year where we have to waste our time on little things. But it's true to a certain extent. Like people start to lose meaning of how good this kid is and how young he is and what he's doing. But it really does have to matter because the team is not very good. And it's hard for me to say because they just dog walked the Knicks yesterday. But I don't think that's representative of how good they are. They're not very good. The Knicks are just even worse and even more poorly coached. But Luka, it's one of the craziest seasons of all time. But if he wins, it definitely is going to end up being Westbrook's situation. And I don't want Luka to fall into that because it's not really his fault that this team is as bad as it is. And it shouldn't reflect on him the way that MVP reflected on Westbrook. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Westbrook, but there was clearly stat chasing that season that was absurd. Like there was games, if you were watching it, where it was people were getting out of his way to give him these crazy rebounds, blocking out just to let him dive on ball. Like it was nuts, man. That's not really what's happening here. Like he is just putting up these insane numbers out of sheer who else is going to do it with this team.
Yeah.
And that's super impressive, but the defense is still pretty subpar for Luka. And I just don't think at the end of the day the team is going to be any good. I'm at this point, I honestly am not sure they're even going to make the play-in. I really don't think they're good. And I don't know what their moves are to go get anybody better. So Luka for me is definitely in third place, and that hurts to say because I love Jokic and I think his numbers will go into him, but he's in the 4 range for me. Okay. But yeah, man, I think Luka he's right there. It's just a matter of having a better team, and we've talked about Jason Kidd a lot of times. We've talked about him. We've even kind of swayed our opinion here and there on Jason Kidd.
I'm staying by opinion on Jason Kidd. I'm not big on him.
I faltered in my dislike of Jason Kidd as a head coach, but I'm all back in. I think he is not the guy. I just don't see it. I think his rotations are terrible. I don't understand the strategy. there's no longevity into winning with this team and with Luka here. So I don't know. What do you think, Bernie? Where's he on your MVP ranking?
I mean, I think Luka's number two. I think that when I see the numbers in terms of offensively, like, yeah, I just the problem is that guys like LeBron James, guys like Russell Westbrook have already set the precedent, and even guys like James Harden who won the MVP too. Like they set the precedent for like what the MVP award is about. Because the problem that I have with the MVP award at times is because it is such a story-driven narrative by the media because they get so many votes, and because they are like the ones that really end up doing the voting, and they basically love to vote storylines in. And that's the frustrating part about the MVP award. Because, you know, if we're really looking at it, guys like LeBron James would have won it multiple times. Guys like Giannis would have won it multiple times. Like James Harden probably would have never won it if there was not story-driven narratives going on, or even Westbrook even. I know Westbrook averaged the triple-double, and we can talk about that stuff, but I agree with you to an extent. Like, success has got to matter. Like we cannot ignore the fact that teams' success has to be accounted for when it comes to talking about this award. Because why else do you play this game? You know, you play this game to win championships. You play this game to be the very best, and at the end of the season, lift up the Larry O'Brien Trophy. This isn't we're lifting up the MVP trophy because that's the final thing I want to do. Like, this has to be a team sport. This is the reason why there's 5 people on the court. If we wanted to do individual stuff, go to tennis, go to golf. Those are your sports if you want to be an individual. And so that's kind of my big thing right now, is that I think that Luka Doncic is number 2, just from the fact that I think he's doing everything that he can. Like you said, it reminds me of the LeBron James of 2007, where he's like just carrying this team, putting everything on his back. And I think the Mavericks have to be careful here in terms of making sure that they provide pieces around Luka Doncic, because he might do the same thing that LeBron James does. Leave and go to a new team, go to a different team, and, you know, say like, hey, like, you guys have not given me any players that are going to help me win this championship. You know, either help me out here in the offseason, Mark Cuban, or I'm leaving. And if I'm Luka Doncic, I'm really trying to force Mark Cuban's hand at this point, because, you know, one thing that kind of gets left unmentioned in that LeBron James Cavaliers run in the beginning of his career is the fact that I felt like they wasted some years. Like,
100%.
Where he could have won championships, they could have made some roster moves. And I think that they are more interested in selling tickets. And I think Brad talked about this in our chat. Is like they're more interested in selling tickets with Luka, you know, going off, going crazy, rather than saying, hey, Luka, let's like get you some pieces. Maybe, you know, maybe some of your stats take a hit because of it, but at the end of the day, it's going to help you win a championship, which is, I think, what they all want. And you know what, Luka's playing out of his mind right now, scoring wise. I think assists and rebound wise, he's been the same since he's been in the league. But now it's time to start winning. And I know that this is an MVP discussion, not really necessarily a let's get Luka Doncic some help discussion. But I do think it's time to talk about how Luka needs to start getting more help in Dallas. And, you know, I'm not the biggest Jason Kidd fan. You know, I think that there's some things where I feel like he runs his superstars to the ground. Almost kind of, it doesn't remind me of Tom Thibodeau in a sense. I think that Jason Kidd is a little bit better than Thibodeau. But I do get some of those Thibodeau, but I do get some of those Thibodeau vibes from Jason Kidd in terms of like, all right, superstar, just go out there and ball out. And so again, I think that he needs help. But he's still like my number 2 guy if I had to go for MVP race. And then I go Giannis number 3. I think that Giannis is continuing to put up great numbers. Obviously, the team is doing really well, and it's kind of recency bias, I feel like, for Giannis as well. Like, playing so well, putting up great numbers, but, you know, just getting kind of left in the dust because of the way that Jason Tatum has kind of stepped up this year, and also Luka has also stepped up. And I think that's the reason why a guy like Giannis gets left in the dust.
And I'll say this again. We've also talked about this for years on this channel, on and off. And I don't know where you stand on this. I actually don't remember, even though we have talked about this as many times as we have. I truly think that they have to start factoring in playoffs into the MVP race. Like I just don't understand how you can separate the most important part of the year from that award. And it's all at the very least they need to introduce a regular season MVP and a whole season MVP, like or something. I just don't understand it because, like I said, this Luka situation is going to end up mirroring the Westbrook MVP and the Harden MVP, because we know actually that these heliocentric offenses, these offenses that run through one dude exclusively, and if he's on, the whole team is having some success, and if he's even remotely off, there's just no way they can win. These teams don't win championships. They just don't, and they never have, and they never will. And I shouldn't say they never have, because they used to, because the league wasn't as good as it is now.
Yeah.
This type of team cannot win a championship in 2022. So we're going to get towards the playoffs, and if they happen to make it in, let's say by some miracle they make it to the play-in game, win the play-in, or in round one, there's almost no chance they can beat any team in the West that they would come up against at that ranking or seeding. They just couldn't do it because there's no other guy. There's no team construction around Luka that even remotely makes sense to what his skill set is. Like none of it. There's no really solid wing defenders around him that can cover his weaknesses on the perimeter. There's just nothing here. So you're totally right. Mark Cuban definitely is going to have to step it up. It's impressive how poorly constructed the team is and how bad the rotations are and just all of it, man. None of it makes any sense, which I guess is why Luka ends up having even more MVP buzz, is because he's doing so much with so little. But yeah, I just don't think you deserve to win an MVP like that. Even though it's not the player's fault, I would blame the team. You can't do it. You can't do it. But you're right. They need to start thinking about it. And what are we going to do to get this guy something that's going to keep him happy and keep him here for a long time? Yeah. Because no way he's not looking at the Wizards and seeing Porzingis have one of the best years of his career so far. There's no way he doesn't see it. Whether or not he wants him back there or not isn't the point. But he has to think, like, we had this guy, we traded for him, and now he's playing significantly better than he ever played for us here.
Yeah.
A worse situation on paper, but they're a better team now. So that stuff doesn't go under the rug. They know that. And I think the fact that they're even, like, you have Luka making comments of, like, the Mavericks don't need to worry about me leaving. Why is he talking about that? I mean, why are we getting questions about this if it's not something that needs to be thought about? That stuff matters. But yeah, let's move on. You want to talk about Giannis real quick and maybe? Yeah. I have one dude. I don't know who. Is there a fifth player on this MVP ladder?
The fifth player is Devin Booker.
Okay, that's actually who I wanted to talk about after Giannis.
Let's talk about these two.
So Giannis, my number 2 in this race. Again, this is very similar to Tatum. I just think team is so good night in, night out. He's one of the top 5 players on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. There's just nothing you can do to slow Giannis down. I know that people say that all the time. There's nothing you can do because he's introduced other facets to his game. Similar to Tatum, he's improved on his playmaking drastically. Drastically. It's so impressive to see the development in Giannis's passing and just the how smart he is about passing out of certain situations where he never would have done that before.
Yeah.
And the funny part is that usually he doesn't need to do it. He can still end up making something out of nothing. When he does, that's why you have these amazing seasons from just role players. Like, Brad, I know you just joined in. I don't know if you can hear me yet. I apologize to Brook Lopez last week. What's up, Brad? Welcome in. I apologized to Brook Lopez last week, and I need to apologize to you because you were right, Brad. I mean, Brook Lopez is having one of the best years, if not the best year of his entire career right now.
He has been phenomenal. It's crazy.
On defense, that's mostly Brook. He is playing top 5 defense in the league of any player right now. The looks he gets on offense is because Giannis is so smart and draws so much attention. Giannis is he's different, man. This is a good juxtaposition between Dallas and Milwaukee. Milwaukee has built a very, very smart team around Giannis that capitalizes on what he's good at and maximizes him. Dallas hasn't done that, but that's why Giannis in the Bucks are one of the 3 best teams in the league. So yeah, there's not much to say about Giannis besides he's Giannis, and that's just what he does.
Yeah, but let's talk about Booker. I mean, you talked about him as kind of like in that top 5 MVP race, obviously putting up great numbers. I think a lot of us, and we talked about this at the beginning of the season, the preseason, right? We talked about how we thought, the Phoenix Suns will fall apart. DeAndre Ayton, that drama with the coach, like that's going to really affect the team. And that clearly hasn't been the case. I think right now they're 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, or are they overall, I think, and like
I believe so.
Are they first in the
West?
I think they're first. Yeah.
I mean,
I think they have the 3rd best record, first in the West.
Yeah, first in the West. I mean, like that's impressive. I mean, I know we
without Chris Paul.
Without Chris Paul too. I mean, this Chris Paul that's been hurt and been in the news recently. I just think that this stuff is starting to really starting to like put a little bit more of a light on Devin Booker, and I think a lot of us got kind of sucked into the he's just a scorer, doesn't really do anything else for the team. But that's kind of what they need him to be, and he has improved his rebounding and assists per game, so I'm going to give him credit for like improving that stuff. I think he's shooting 54% from 3, which is great
on a lot of shots.
Yeah, and so to me, I feel like this is a great opportunity to talk about Devin Booker, and whether whatever happened in the finals, it is what it is. But he's definitely has improved as a player overall since that moment, and so I want to give him my props up, and I was going to actually talk about him too, Pete. Like he's played really well. I love the way that he's been moving. And really carrying this Phoenix Suns team when their leader has been out for a while.
Well, and the one thing we talked about this was my biggest thing for Book before this season. We've never seen this dude do this without Chris Paul. We've never seen it. He's had good offensive games. He had an 81-point game, right? Wasn't that how many he had? Did he have 70? Oh, I'm thinking of Kobe. He had 70, right?
Yeah.
Against the Celtics. It didn't matter back then. People took it as it mattered back then, but it just didn't. The team was garbage, right? He was taking every shot for the team. This is different, and I think the thing that's the most interesting about this is he's had more MVP buzz for seasons he deserved it way less than this one. Like, he needs to get more discussion in it because he actually is doing all of the things that I personally have criticized him for in the past, which is night in, night out, being a leader for your team, setting the tone, and just taking over down the stretch of games. Like, he is doing that every night right now, and that's truly what's impressed me the most, because it doesn't even look like they need Chris Paul at this point. And whether or not that's going to come true in the playoffs, we'll see. I mean, that's probably the biggest caveat for any player on this entire list. Everybody else we've seen have some serious success in the playoffs, and I know they made it to the finals, or the Suns made it to the finals, but it just didn't feel the same as even Luka taking the Mavs to the Western Conference Finals last season. I don't know if that's just a me and Book problem or something I have with my perception of him. This season is truly, there's something different about him. He really looks like that guy every night. And we didn't really talk about this with Tatum, but there's been people saying, like, this is one of the first seasons where Tatum actually looks like a superstar, like, every night. It's not just he's like a prospective superstar in the making. He actually has reached that point. I think Booker's right there. I mean, Booker has never felt so impactful on a night in, night out basis as he does right now. Me watching the game, I feel like he is almost consistently the best player on the court most nights right now, which is not something I would have thought I was saying about Devin Booker 3 months ago. That's just for sure. Brad, you're a huge Devin Booker hater like myself, aren't you?
I mean, yeah, but I got to give him his props. He's been dominating this year. This hurts me to say, but I actually have a take that I think when CP3 comes back, it'd be wild considering how much they're paying him, but he should come off the bench just because I think they flow better as a unit with Campaign pushing the tempo a little bit. I know you can't bring CP3 off the bench, but I mean, they honestly do run better without him kind of, traffic copying everything. This is my point guard, but the proof is in the pudding,
Right.
Yeah.
Mikal Bridges has been a different player because he gets more touches. Ayton gets more touches. I actually like the idea of Booker running point guard for this team because the league is going towards tall point guards like Luka, so he doesn't have to be a point guard per se, but he can run your offense, and you could slot in someone tall and a good defender next to him, and I think you would have a better result than you did with the Suns map series because that was mostly a CP3 failure. If I'm being honest, the Game 7 was a team failure, but blowing the series was mostly a CP3 issue.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something that we'll have to definitely review, and maybe that's something that maybe down the line we could talk about some CP3 situations, especially that one, because I do agree with you, Brad. I do think that there was some CP3 issues in that series, and I starting to listen to you more, I do agree with you in the sense that maybe CP3 does have to come off the bench. We've talked about the Suns before on this channel, numerous amount of times when Devin Booker was there, and there was they just need to find that point guard. They keep failing in the draft. And maybe Devin Booker was the point guard they had all along. Like Brad was saying, the league is going towards that way. I mean, I probably still would have tried to go after Luka that year because I know they went 8.
Yeah. That's not even a question.
But I do think that it's very interesting to see that Devin Booker has definitely played a lot better, and the team has flowed a lot better, and it's helped my fantasy team with Bridges balling out. But I'm excited.
That definitely has been helping your team, Bernie.
For real.
But I've been excited. This is the first time in a while where I've been excited about a Devin Booker situation. Before I was really questioning him, especially in that final series. Where he had that bad turnover, not recognizing that the guy Holiday was going to come behind him. But man, it's fun to watch Devin Booker, develop and grow, and that's the fun thing about basketball. People grow and develop and get new tricks in their bags and things like that. So it's a lot of fun to see.
It'll be interesting to see how it translates to can he do this in the playoffs? We'll see.
That's the thing. In a big moment, I know I bring this up all the time. Is this the same Devin Booker that needs to move the mascot, right? Is it the same guy? That sounds like just a joke, but I really mean that. Is the mindset the same as that guy? Because it doesn't feel like it is, but we still have to see a huge primetime moment where this dude is going to take on a better team possibly and come through in the clutch. I still need to see it the whole season, but we'll see. And going on your CP3 thing, I wasn't even really thinking about that. I still think they should probably keep him on the front line when they have him. But he is very old. He has not necessarily looked his best in a while. This could be a situation where you do start looking at maybe a better fitting point guard in the long term, or a better fitting kind of a guard who could play point and more off-ball type of stuff, right? And definitely let Booker take the reins a little bit more. Because I was thinking what if they went and got somebody they could either get one of these two dudes. What about Lonzo or Caruso from Chicago? That would be an incredible fit for this team. You have even more defense. You have somebody who doesn't need the ball in their hands to be very impactful, do a lot of things. They can take the pressure off of Book if they need to as well. I think that's something that's important. And realistically, my biggest pushback would be I do not trust Campaign in big situations. I just don't.
Absolutely, yeah.
I like your idea, but there needs to be somebody better than him to be that person to fill in for Chris Paul. And if it's somebody that's like Lonzo or Caruso, a bigger dude, that's a huge lineup that they would be running.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how much they could really use Jay Crowder right now. It's funny, he has to be regretting his choice. He was definitely hearing everybody talk about this team was going to fall off a cliff and sold out to get out of there. And now he's now I got to just, keep the energy I have. But this is probably the best team he could have been on, too, for himself. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. For sure. Um, with that being said, let us know in the comment section down below, people. What do you guys think of the MVP race? Is it Tatum number one? Is it Luka number one? Like, let us know who you guys think is the MVP in the comment section down below, and also the live chat if you are here live on the Sunday morning or afternoon, wherever you're at watching it. We appreciate you doing that. And please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button to let people know that you enjoyed the charge and you enjoy our conversations and topics when it comes to talking about the MVP. Like I said, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the MVP race?
Wait, Burn, before you move on, sorry to do this, but since I didn't get to give my Luka take on MVP, can I go? Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't think he can be top 5 in MVP voting with his team's record. He's putting up amazing numbers. He's hooping, but team record has to count for something, So that's all I got to say. And Tatum is number 1.
That's pretty much exactly what we were saying. Like, it's really, really tough to give Luka an award where his team might not be 500 at the end of the season.
Yeah,
like,
they might.
I don't think they will be. I honestly don't think this team can go 500 for this whole season because
they can't.
There's almost no way Luka doesn't miss 2 weeks at some point. And if he misses any stretch of time, they won't win a game while he's out. They literally won't be able to compete with even teams like the Rockets if Luka's out. They can't do it. They're terrible.
Yep.
And not to go back too deep into the Dallas stuff, I do not understand the Christian Wood off the bench stuff. I just don't get it.
Bro, that infuriates me. It makes Jason Kidd is trying to galaxy brain that whole situation, and he just needs to play him next to Luka.
It's atrocious. It's absolutely atrocious. But yeah, we can get out of that.
Yeah. Sorry, Bernie, but that's what
you're good. No, it's all good.
Mavericks are hard to watch.
But what we can do is we can transition to talking about power rankings. Since we are going to talk about kind of teams that have kind of moved up or down the ladder. Quickly, I'm just going to go over the top list. This is, of course, coming from CBS. I know that maybe ESPN or even NBA.com has a different list. But right now we have the Celtics at 1, Suns at 2, Bucks at 3, Pelicans at 4, Nuggets at 5, Cavs at 6, Grizz at 7, Clippers at 8, Kings at 9, Pacers at 10, Nets at 11, 76ers at 12, Raptors at 13, Warriors at 14, Jazz sinking lower and lower, number 15, Hawks at 16, Timberwolves at 17, Heat at 18, Mavs at 19, Trailblazers at 20, Wizards at 21, Bulls at 22, your Knicks, Pete, 23, Lakers at 24, Rockets at 25, Thunder at 26, Hornets at 27, Pistons at 28, Magic at 29, and Spurs at 30. I kind of want to start off by talking about, I feel like maybe continuing the conversation that we had earlier, the Phoenix Suns. I mean, number 2, like I talked about before, this team really shouldn't be where they're at right now. Especially not only because of the whole Ayton drama, but because of CP3. I mean, Brad, we talked about it before just a little bit ago in the last segment, and obviously talking about this in a new video here. The fact that like they are 15-7 with Chris Paul being hurt most of the time, like that's gotta matter for something. And that continued to be the number 1 in the West after last season, where it felt like the momentum just completely dropped, and you could have easily said, hey, the Phoenix Suns, they're gonna be like top 8 in the league, or bottom 8. And so I think that that's something that I definitely want to, kind of tip my cap off or give props to the Phoenix Suns for continuing that dominance. And it just kind of goes to show you Monty Williams as
such a coach, such a good coach,
as a great coach. And, the reason why you stick with him this whole time and, let and trust his brain and trust his decision-making out there. So I got to give credit to the Phoenix Suns. That's like my number 1 thing.
Yeah, they deserve it. I mean, it's because they don't even have Cam Johnson, who stepped into that Jay Crowder role. So they don't have Jay Crowder or the guy who actually took his starting job from him. They don't have Chris Paul. Campaign, like I said, Campaign's fine. I don't know, man. He's not that guy. He's so frustrating to watch to me. But yeah, credit to Phoenix. My biggest problem, and this is probably still me being a bit of a hater, I still have some residual like
Mm-hmm.
Can't get that Dallas game out of my mind, and just seeing how they've exploded sometimes. I still think they would get absolutely smoked by the Bucks right now, so I don't know how you put them above the Bucks, but it is what it is. They deserve it. It's been an impressive start to the season. They do need to do something though if they want to carry this regular season success into the playoffs, I think. Do you guys think like this is actually sustainable for the whole season for them?
I mean, I think it could be sustainable for the regular season just because like they're a well-oiled machine, everybody knows their role, they listen to their coach and they execute. But when it comes to the playoffs, they definitely need some more help. You can't be relying on Campaign as your third option sometimes, he can't be your main point guard. Yeah, so I agree with you there. They definitely need to, make a move, get Jay Crowder out of there and get somebody that can actually help them in the playoffs, because they won 64 games last year and they're on pace to win, maybe 50 plus again. But
yeah,
they definitely need to make a move. Otherwise, they'll just be frauds again.
That's the unfortunate part with the team.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think they definitely do have to make a move, and I think they will. I think that there's a move out there. I don't know what it is currently. I'm sure there's some teams that are looking to move pieces. Jazz might be one of those contenders now because of how far off from or fall from grace that they've had these last couple of days or last couple of weeks, I should say. So look for them to be sellers in the later market.
Ooh, that's a good idea, Bernie. The Jazz, because they could get some really good stuff from the Jazz. Because what if they replace CP with Conley? You have kind of like a B-movie version of CP3, right? But Conley was pretty good at the beginning of this season before he had that injury come up. They could take Conley and they could even try and snag Lauri Markkanen if they wanted to. I don't think they could get him, but that would be a really good trade.
Oh, they're going to hold him hard. They got diamond hands on Lauri.
They're not going to move him. But
yeah.
That would be nice if they could get him. I mean, that'd be a good
the
fit.
demographic too well of the Jazz. So.
Yeah.
It really does. Yeah. Big white.
But do you guys have any other teams that you kind of want to mention? I know that I know I mentioned every single team. But is there a team in this ranking list that you feel like is too high, too low?
Which list are you on, Bernie? Are you on the NBA's power rankings?
I'm on the CBS.com.
Let me look this up real quick just so I can see it on my screen.
Yeah,
Brad, do you have any?
Let me pull this up real quick.
How about you, Bernie? You have a second one while we look real quick?
Yeah, let's talk about them. You know what? We're gonna talk about the Lakers just because I feel like they played really well.
I like this.
I think as we kind of reviewed the start of the season, Laker fans were crying. Laker fans were sad. Like this was like a whole situation where, Westbrook was getting nicknamed after nickname. Anthony Davis was getting nickname after nickname. LeBron James was. And this team has been playing so much better the last couple of days now that they've kind of had their big three together healthy and really playing at a tremendous level. I know that they are still going to have some issues. I know that, they're not the perfect team. I think we agree that they're going to be a play-in team. But right now they're cooking with grease. And, with LeBron James passing Magic Johnson for assists is amazing in itself.
Let's go.
I am excited to see where the Lakers can continue this momentum and really shutting up Laker fans and Laker haters, but most are Laker fans because Laker fans are the most unbearable fan group in the NBA, in my opinion. Really shutting them up and, saying like, hey, like we have we still have, if Anthony Davis can play the way that he does consistently, you have one of the best big men in the league. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, in my opinion. Like he's a really good player. I know the injury history comes back to bite him in the butt, but I think the Lakers are playing great. And if they can continue to play like this, I'd have no doubt in my mind that the Lakers can at least, be at least a top 7, top 6 seed and see what they can do from there with Anthony Davis healthy and really taking that. He needs to be the number one guy on that team. That is for sure for me.
I mean, this stretch has showed it. I mean, he's playing the best basketball he's played since the bubble, really, but also that final New Orleans stretch. He's been incredible. But this is what we always say, like the dude, if he just took over the reins like LeBron wanted him to in the first place, this is what we would see. But he's stepping up to the plate in a big way. They definitely still need to make a move. The way that they have Westbrook playing, I'm kind of in a situation where I honestly don't know if they should trade Westbrook if they don't need to. Like if they can convince him to stay off the bench and play the way he has been, why not just keep him? I mean, this is what we always said. Like if they did this, you have a super valuable bench unit that's led by a guy that's a former MVP. Like this is exactly what it is. And LeBron, and I think LeBron even said it about their big three after the Bucks win. It's the best they've ever played together in the 2 years they've been together, or the year and a half now. It's true. They actually have some chemistry building. They understand how to play together a little bit. Wouldn't ruin it now. You waited so long and let these guys try and get this together for so long. Now, what's the point of breaking it up unless you absolutely need that contract to get some big player that can slide into your starting lineup? I get it then. I don't even think you need to do that with how valuable their picks are that they can trade. They can go get some really good stuff, add with those three dudes. So I would do that. I'd go get Miles Turner tomorrow if I was them. I don't know why they still haven't done it.
Yeah, I agree. I would. I thought about this the other day watching Russ because he was huge in that Bucks win. He came in and got 5 assists like right away, like chained off each other. It was wild. Like, and people forget he can do that. Yeah, exactly. He led the league in assists for like 3 years in a row or something like that. Mm-hmm. If he is their best avenue though to getting a Miles Turner, I would want to move him, but I do like the idea of him leading the second unit. But at this point, you're right about the picks. Those are super valuable. Maybe they could just package Pat Bev and Kendrick Nunn, who haven't been giving you much, and then Kendrick Nunn has been giving nothing. I see why the Heat let him walk away for $0. It's crazy. It's crazy.
How much did we have to hear about this dude for 2 years for him not to play any minutes?
I know,
this
right?
Is what it was. Lakers fans, please watch basketball more often. That's all I ask. Like
I was excited about him too. The first year, like at least seeing what he did on the Heat. He came in that playoff series when they were floundering in the bubble, and he got some buckets.
When he was a rookie, right?
Rookie or second year player?
He was an old rookie, I think.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was his rookie season. He did look pretty good in that for what it was, but
he could get some buckets, yeah.
That big of a stretch. It was like
yeah, it's tough. So yeah, I would move off of him and Pat Bev because Pat Bev is really not giving you much either. He's actually hurting you most times. The hustle is nice here and there, but yeah, he's been awful. It is good to see the team playing defense though. They have the best half court defense in the league. So, they are able to shut people down, and that's how you win games. And more importantly, that's how you win playoff games. It's all played in the half court. Transition is taken away in the playoffs. So, Jeannie Buss, Rob Pelinka, you guys have something, just make a move around the margins. Exactly. They fell into it, honestly. Yeah, they still don't even have a big wing. Like, Troy Brown is our biggest wing player. So, and we're cooking with that. So, if they could make a move, they would be good.
It's nuts. If I was the Lakers, I would be calling Chicago every single day. Get Vucevic and DeRozan.
Did you guys see the reports about that trade?
Is it out there? Is there people talking about it? Because they need to do it.
They said that the Lakers had internal discussions, but I don't. Do you guys think the Bulls would do that?
I think they would. That Vucevic contract is terrible. They're going nowhere fast. I honestly think Chicago is, like, of all the big market teams, I think they are the most likely blow it up team in the NBA right now. I just don't see they're going nowhere fast. Nowhere. Bad coach, unhappy players. It's ugly. And DeRozan, the contract's not terrible, but it's just it goes back to the timeline. Why are you keeping this dude right now if you're so far away from really competing? And Vucevic is just not that guy, but he would be much better suited on the Lakers, that's for sure.
He would be next to AD. It's like a Mirotic AD pairing all over again.
Yeah. And I'd just get Bobby Portis, then you have some real motivation in there. Have some real violent motivation in there. Can I talk about my team? I'm ready to bring up my team. A disappointment, or do we have any more about the Lakers?
My last thing about the Lakers is, am I crazy for bringing up AD and Giannis debates again?
I think you're.
I need to see it for longer. I need to see this stretch continue, because I will say, Brad, I have not seen anybody play Giannis's game as well as Anthony Davis did last night or
So
two
that's
nights,
what I'm
whenever that
saying. That's what I'm. Yeah,
in the last 3 years of Giannis being the best player in the league, that is one of the single best games against him I've ever seen. There's just no stretch. But that's what Anthony Davis is if he's playing his best game. Like that is literally why he's been that guy for so long. It's just it's gotta be consistent for a while for me to believe it.
that's fair. Okay. There is hope, though. I'll take it.
There's hope for sure. I mean, now the discussion of trading AD, you got to move on from that. I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing you can get for Anthony Davis right now that's as valuable as Anthony Davis is to you. So don't do anything with him.
Let's talk about your Knicks. I think Knicks. I'll let you lead this one.
That's not who I was going to talk about.
Oh, who are you going to talk about?
I said my team I'm picking because I'm very disappointed in the Atlanta Hawks. That's my team to bring up. We were also talking about them off stream a little bit, Bernie, you and I in our other chat with our friend Josh, who's a big Atlanta Hawks fan. I think they're so disappointing. I just don't really understand much of what they do on a night in, night out basis. And this is just a little off tangent of them actually on the court, like their performance, but just their attitude. I don't think there's a team that has a worse attitude on a nightly basis than the Atlanta Hawks. There's no team that acts like they've done more without doing anything than the Atlanta Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
There's no team that trash talks when they have no right to trash talk as much as this team and have it blow up in their face in the moment than the Atlanta Hawks do. I like Nate McMillan, but I don't get it. I don't understand how you don't have Trey moving off ball more often. Don't understand anything with John Collins. I just don't like this team. And based on the move they made to go get DeJounte Murray, some of the success we've seen with the DeJounte Murray Trey Young pairing so far, for it to be not good in the way it's been is a huge failing. It's been so bad considering what they gave up to get DeJounte and how far they've made it in certain runs in the playoffs in the past. Like, they need to be better than this based on the trajectory that they've been on in recent years and the fact that you're making win-now moves. Going to get DeJounte Murray with 3 first-round picks is a win-now move. You're not winning at a higher rate than you have in the past few seasons. And there's a lot of people that would give them excuses in terms of, Bogdanovich is just coming back. He looked awful in his first game. Trey is hurt right now, I think. He didn't play the last couple games, I'm pretty sure. Just doesn't matter because even when Trey was there, it wasn't necessarily equating to like a very high end. This team is really competing, and we beat the Bucks twice this season. I get it. If I have to hear about that anymore, I'm gonna tear my eyes out. All right, it doesn't matter. They cannot compete against the Bucks when it matters because they don't do the things it takes to win at a high level on most occasions. I don't know. I'm not a big Hawks fan. I shouldn't be as disappointed in them as I am. I'm really disappointed because I think they're way better than they've played so far this season. And I could honestly see them having another mid-season coaching change because Nate McMillan it's not motivation that he gave them when he stepped in for Lloyd Pierce. It appears to have dried up because they do not play for him in the way that they should. And they are one of the laziest teams I watch most nights. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being extra harsh on them.
I think you're being extra harsh, man.
I think they're infuriating.
Here's the thing.
I think that checks out, honestly.
You think that checks out? You think I'm on something, Brad?
Yeah, I think you are. Mostly because Trey and DeJounte are like, they're both super. It's the nature of the game, but they're both really cocky players. And they act like they've done something, but they haven't. So they don't take every game as serious as they should. Like that Rockets game, there's no way they should have lost that game, and that was extremely embarrassing.
That game. I already felt that way before that game, but that game exemplified all my feelings. Like that game, maybe the word is exacerbated all my feelings. I felt even stronger afterwards because that was like, this is what this team does every night, but in the worst example of it. And that if there's people out there that think that's the last time that's going to happen with this team. You're crazy. It's going to happen more times because that's who they are. That's their attitude as a team, is that they are those guys. You can't play that way. Like Bernie, I would push back and say, look at your team. Look at the Celtics. They don't have that mentality any night. And they actually have been there and done things. But that's the reason they're so successful every night. Like, that's it. So,
They go out and play hard every game.
They can't compete in a 7-game series against any of the top 4 teams in the East. They can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, my only thing that I'll say is that I think the reason why I think I'm going to push back for the devil's advocate, I'm going to hit that trap card. It's just because I think there's been just a lot of injuries to this team. Like, John Collins is now going to be out for 2 weeks. DeAndre Hunter is going to be like, he's a huge piece and, huge factor into that rotation. And if he's not
hurt
there
every year.
Nah, I mean, he's not really hurt every year. I would say that this is kind of one of those, like, it's just unfortunate. I just think that that's kind of where the Hawks are at right now. And when they don't have those pieces, their second unit is not as impressive as their first unit. They really are reliant heavily on their first unit to kind of set the tone and set the pace for the game. And I think that that's kind of where the Hawks are at right now, is that their role players are now in a position where they have to now be the guy. And they're not capable of it. And, whether that's just the Hawks makeup in terms of, getting like a guy like Bogdanovich to get back to healthy, whether that's Hunter getting back to healthy, or whether they need to start moving John Collins. Every year it seems like there's always a John Collins trade waiting to happen for the Hawks. And so
they're not getting anything for him of value with that contract.
So, I think the Hawks are going to have to stay the course, and I think they'll be where they were at, maybe last year, the year before that. They just need to continue to, just hold the fort. And I know that that's tough because Trae Young hasn't been playing very well as of late, but I think that he'll get back on this track at some point and, get them going again. And, DeJounte Murray too. I think DeJounte Murray's definitely has improved, and I think the trade was worth it, Pete. And I know we'll probably get into like trades and all that stuff.
I still think it's worth it. It's just you have to maximize it being worth it in the first place, Like you have to capitalize on actually doing it.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I think the Hawks, we'll see if they're willing to get better. That's the big thing.
I really think that's it right there, Bernie. The willingness to do it is the question.
Yeah, I feel like every time they run into some adversity, they just kind of pin it on the coach. Like, I know Lloyd Pierce was rough, and Nate McMillan, he needs to run Trae off the ball more, but there was a report about Nate and a player getting into an argument, and then apparently the team wants Nate fired or something like that.
It's disgusting, man.
So,
it's disgusting.
Yeah.
As if that's an excuse to act the way they act on the court and play the way they play. Like, it's not Nate McMillan's fault. He's not a good coach. He's not a top-end coach, but he is certainly not a bottom-end coach either. He's not the reason they're 13-11. It's or 13-10. It's just not that.
He's an average coach at best. So like, it's definitely not his fault. I would say that. I mean, Bernie, the injuries might play some factor, but I think it's mostly their roster. Like, I think their roster is just way worse than it has been. They made a win now move for DeJounte Murray, but the rest of their guys are just... They had Gallo last year, who was helping them on offense. They had Lou Will last year. They had Kevin Herter, who's
been playing the best basketball of his life.
Shooting the laces off the ball.
Yeah.
Yep.
That means something.
It does.
Go away. It's not like he grew 6 inches or anything, or all of a sudden developed a shot. He could shoot before. He's just better.
And I think we would see the same thing from John Collins, because the Hawks have been, and this is on Nate McMillan, but I also think it's on Trae Young being unwilling to play off the ball. They use John Collins like he's Grant Williams. Stay in the corner, shoot threes, and then go play defense. Like he's not that guy. He's not Grant Williams. He can get rebounds. He has a little post move. He's not the best on-ball creator.
As much as Grant Williams.
Exactly. So you might as well use him like he's getting paid. So yeah, the whole team is messy, because even with John in the starting lineup, he was playing terrible. So I don't get it.
He's awful, man. I mean, that contract, and I don't even know if it's his fault at this point. He might be one of the most confusing players in the league, because, like you said, I think he would be dramatically better in certain places.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't get it.
There was a
honestly
point
think
where we thought he'd be an all-star. He was a double-double machine.
legitimately, yes. He looked like one of the up-and-coming, better young power forwards in the league, and now I would put him in one of the worst contracts in the league discussion, personally.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let's move on to another team that I feel like we should talk about who, are somehow sneaking around and not really being mentioned, and that's the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
The Chicago Bulls have been one of the most, I would say, most disappointing teams after last year's expectations of they were supposed to be the number one team. Like they were supposed to be in the top 3, battling it out with the Celtics, with the Bucks, with the 76ers, all these teams in the East. But I understand injuries play a huge concern, and my boy Lonzo, like it's looking grim right now in terms of like how long the rehab has taken to get him back.
It's awful.
But I just think like, this is probably kind of the worst, I would say, breakdown of a team that just got put together. Because, we talk about Vucevic not, obviously not living up to the expectations that he was supposed to live up to. Obviously with his magic numbers, they were obviously inflated. But also to me, it comes down to like, I understand, I'm not going to pin it all on Zach LaVine, but this is not a very good Zach LaVine year so far.
It's bad. Yeah.
23 points a game, 5.7 assists, but shooting less than 40% from the field. Like that's just not going to win you basketball games. That is going to lose you a lot of games. And when your best player, I think what it really is, you guys, is that I think that he's just not interested in playing basketball for the Chicago Bulls right now. He just looks so uninterested. So
he looks like a guy that wants to get moved for sure.
I think he doesn't want to play with DeRozan. That's it.
Do you think it's that, or he doesn't want to play for Billy Donovan? Because I think it's maybe more.
I think it's both. I think it could be both.
It could be both. Yeah.
I think DeRozan, Zach is the guy that likes to be the guy. So he really didn't like DeRozan coming in. This is all speculation, but from what it looks like, he doesn't like having to see DeRozan take those game-winning shots when it could be him. And then, Billy Donovan benching him is crazy and just made the relationship even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like we talked about this early, Bernie, with Luka and the Mavs. Like these dudes hear everything that everybody's talking about. They hear all the speculation, analysis of how bad trades are. Like we're gonna come back to this Vucevic trade for the Bulls in our later segment, but there's no way they don't think about how awful this team has been managed in certain ways in the last couple of years. Like it's been really terrible. And one thing for LaVine too is he's seen some of the worst seasons in Chicago Bulls history the last few years. He had that one season with who was that awful coach they had for the 1 year? The big
Troy Hoiberg?
No. Fred Hoiberg. He was terrible, but there was the other guy. Remember his replacement that they almost had like the mutiny of him when he was their coach? I don't remember what his name was. He'll never be a coach in the NBA again. I'll find it in a minute. But this team is just so poorly managed. Jim Boylan, that is who it is. I mean, that is one of the biggest train wrecks of coaching ever in NBA history, and it doesn't get talked about, but it was atrocious, and Zach LaVine was right there in the middle of it. That's why I said this team is the most likely blow it up team in the whole league, because they have nothing to build from because they traded all their picks. Mm-hmm. Don't really have any young players that have a ton of promise other than Ayo. Looks pretty solid. It's not like he's going to be a superstar. Patrick Williams I don't know what's going on with him. I like certain things about him. I was huge on him coming into the draft. I loved what I saw from him in his rookie season at certain points. It just hasn't clicked. Like it just has not clicked on a night in, night out basis. And again, this is a team that is so out of whack with the timeline. There's no continuity between any of the ages of their players, what direction they're heading as far as improving. They're a train wreck. This is a really bad spot. And I can't help but agree, like LaVine not only looks like he's trying to play his way out of Chicago in a certain way. I don't know if he's just out there tanking to get out of Chicago, but there's no confidence in the infrastructure around him, which has to play a factor in it too. Like he's shooting with the least confidence I've probably ever seen Zach LaVine shoot. Even in seasons where he had worse statistics, he at least looked more confident than he looks right now on a nightly basis. So yeah, they're such a train wreck. They should move. And the only bright side is they have a ton of pieces that are individually valuable to other places more than they are to Chicago. So they need to start looking, because like Caruso, I think Caruso would probably get a first round pick from somebody. Don't you guys think that?
Oh, definitely. I think
Somebody
every
would get
team
it.
trying to win would give you a first round pick for him.
Yeah, like Milwaukee would send it.
The
Knicks we
Warriors.
talked about Warriors, the Lakers would send something for him. There's a ton of teams that would be interested in him. I think even Lonzo is injured as he is. Somebody would want him.
Well, I
There's
don't know
tons
about
of-
that. I think
I
Lonzo's
really-
cooked food.
I don't know. I think somebody would take him and just let him sit on the back burner for a while, and just take as long as you need to get healthy. And if you ever turn out, you turn out. But here's some crazy protected pick for him. You know, I just think there's a ton of stuff they could get, but yeah, they're such a disaster. What would be the first thing you guys would even do for that team?
Caruso to the Warriors.
Yeah, Caruso to the Warriors. You would want their pick,
Just for the
though?
pick?
Just for
Wouldn't
the
want their
pick.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's
They
fair.
need they need to do something with this roster. I mean, you
Want
got
those Lakers picks.
maybe you get those Lakers. I mean, do you trade Zach LaVine and
So
try to?
I'm telling you
You
now.
just paid him all that money, though.
I have already accepted deep in my heart that Zach LaVine is going to be a New York Knick in the next few months. I just know
your
it's
next
gonna
Nick,
happen.
your next Nick player.
It is literally going to happen. I just have this feeling of like, there's no way that doesn't happen. They're going to send 3 or 4 first round picks for him and a couple young players. It's going to be a crazy overpay. Chicago's going to have a great outlook afterwards, and the New York Knicks will be the New York Knicks. That's just how it's going to go. I have accepted it, and I am prepared for it.
I'd want to see him on the Mavericks. I feel like that would be a good look
That
next to
would
Luka.
be sick. That would
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
that would be very good for everybody involved, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Put
see
up
if
some
see if
numbers
it
with that
happens.
squad.
Mark Cuban just wants to continue this run. I feel like, but
Mark Cuban. What a
Money
bum.
laundering scheme. That's what
But-
that is.
I think for the Chicago Bulls, I think they need to start just going back to them. They need to start figuring out what they're going to do now, because they need to start asking Zach LaVine. They need to start asking. Basically, they just need to start asking Zach LaVine, like, do you still want to be here? Because right now, like, the attitude and the numbers that you're putting up are showing that, hey, you want to move on and do something else. And even DeRozan too. I know DeRozan is obviously playing really well.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter though.
Is it
He's,
time
what
to-
is he? 34, 33?
34, I think. So
Again, that's just really, really. There's no long-term plan with your ages being all over the place like that in terms of team building. Pretty poor. Brad, do you have another team? I have one more I want to talk about.
I do. My team would be the Houston Rockets.
all
Okay.
the way down here.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys watch a lot of them, but like I know they're the worst team in the league, but it is even worse than that. Like they're not even fun to watch. It's like the Magic suck, right? But at least they have Paulo, they have Ball. Jamal Mosley has them playing, some fun basketball. But the Rockets, that team is basically an AAU team. It's like there's no structure. Like I feel like I've given Steven Silas a pretty long leash without some slander. So
No, it's time, Brad. Brad, it
Bro.
is time to do it.
bro, I cannot stand this guy. They have Sengun, who is, an amazing, talented player, and they're trying to build him up to be a cornerstone, but his minutes are all out of whack. Like Steven Silas won't even play him consistent minutes. Some nights he plays 19, some nights he plays 25, some nights he plays 30. It's crazy, He's asking KPJ to be the point guard, but he doesn't put him in positions to be successful as the point guard because he'll put in KPJ, Jalen Green, Eric Gordon. And like, bro, he's putting out lineups of Garrison Matthews, Dacian Nix. It's garbage, man. It's honestly like Eric Gordon should be off the team at this point so your young guys can develop or get a better vet because Eric Gordon doesn't talk. the offense is stagnant. They just stand around. And Sengun, like, I don't know if you guys heard that Jokic quote where he said their offense like stagnant and they should use Sengun as like a fulcrum to get guys moving and pass in the same way. And so
he would be coaching the team better than Steven Silas because he's
literally, he's at 100% right. But they don't do that. It's just KPJ ISO. I want you to play point guard KPJ, but you're going to ISO every possession, or Jalen Green ISO. So it's literally garbage basketball. Like, watching that team hurts my eyes, and I know they should still be bad, but they shouldn't be this bad.
They just don't have a true point guard for me. Like, there's no one that like kind of sets the tone. I think Sengun is the closest guy. It's kind of that like point forward. And that's kind of my frustration with the Rockets, watching them, and why I have only watched maybe 2 games of theirs, maybe 4 actually. I've watched 4 of their games, but it was 4 terrible games. I've not been impressed with the Houston Rockets.
They've all been terrible games. Man.
Jabari Smith has been okay, but they can't fully unlock the team if they don't really have a true structure and like really get guys going. And as much as they have so much talent, like you said, Brad, if you can't combine the talent along with the coaching, it's gonna be a bad time, and you're obviously seeing that right now.
I'm glad you brought them up, Brad, because I was thinking about them recently, and I think in a lot of ways this situation is pretty parallel to the 76ers trust the process stuff. Okay, and hear me out. All right, it's not a compliment. I don't mean this in a good way. You have this coach, and I like Steven Silas way more than I like Brett Brown, but that's probably just like a personality thing. Like, I like him as a person more than I like Brett Brown. They're both terrible coaches, right? If you're looking at long-term team development, you should realize that he's not the guy that's going to maximize your players in the long term and set them up to be a good team in a few years, right? And in a lot of ways, like the 76ers, because I think there'd be people still at this point who would push back and say the process was a good thing. It wasn't a good thing. They have Joel Embiid, who just happens to be Joel Embiid, right? But look at how the Ben Simmons thing went. Look at how all of the other players that they had come through their doors in the process years in Philly went.
Just a revolving door. Yeah.
Super poorly because they had was no development of talented players. They're just talented without any building into long-term career success as far as being a professional basketball player. That is the same thing that's happening in Houston. There's no plan for how to develop Jalen Green, how to develop Jabari Smith, because I would even push back, Bernie. Jabari Smith has been good. He's been legit pretty good. The problem is, none of it looks good because they're all playing their own game. There's like 5 dudes all running their own, whatever they can do to get the ball and take a shot. That's literally what Houston does every night. I have a strong suspicion, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that they rectify this soon. We're going to waste a bunch of these dudes' careers because it is so hard to pull yourself out of bad habits 5-6 years into your NBA career, and then put yourself into really good winning cultures. Like, there's not very many players that can transition out of that and into something better. And most developmental years of their career went so poorly. Like, Houston is just so mismanaged. I don't get any of it, man. It's honestly, it is to the point where I would say it's career malpractice for some of these kids. Like,
it is.
They're just hurting these kids. Like I don't know how else to say it. I feel bad, and I would be like, if I was like a parent to one of these kids or a close friend, I would be like, you have to find a way to get out of this town. Get out of here. You're just gonna kill yourself of being, hard to fill in player on any other squad in the league. So really, what did we talk about, Bernie, before the draft with Jalen Green? Wildly talented, going to be a good player. He doesn't pass the ball. He's not that guy. He's going to take a ton of shots, put up numbers, but it's going to look ugly. None of that has been proven true.
Yeah.
they had to know that too. And why didn't you go get a guard who is actually a point guard? Kevin Porter Jr. is not a guard. He's not a point guard.
His turnovers hurt me so much. He leads the league in turnovers by like a huge margin. It's crazy.
It's shockingly bad. The fact that nobody's talking about why they don't have a point guard after years of doing this nonsense. Yeah, they're a disaster. I was honestly thinking like this would be a fun team for old Wemby to come to. I pray he doesn't. I just don't want anybody of talent to go there until they have a different manager, who even is their general manager? Who is
Raphael Stone. He's from Seattle.
Oh my God! Find your way back to Seattle, bud. There's nothing going good for this team because, like you said, that Jokic quote was shocking because that is true.
Yeah,
like Sengun is the best passer on the team. He's the best creator. That doesn't say much. I mean, he's a great creator for the type of player he is, but that still doesn't say much for the team. They're disgusting. They make me sad.
All right, Pete, your last team, and then let's get to the
last team, and then we're gonna get to our trade segment.
Yep.
I was debating. I was going to talk about Cleveland because I love Cleveland, and I still think people are sleeping on them long term. I still they're to me top 4 team in the league most nights. They had a little bit of a bad stretch in the last week. Couple dropped games they probably should have won, but I would just equate that to some poor offensive outings. But team I wanted to talk about. Oh man, I'm gonna flip the switch on another team with an even worse record than the Rockets, but I like a lot of what I've seen from the Orlando Magic. Even though it's not going well, this is a team I actually would blame some of the injuries on poor record. The Paolo injury for those few weeks was pretty tough. And now they don't have Wendell Carter Jr. again, another pretty integral part of their team. I like the individual. This is a good example of developing your players. Like we're seeing these kids get better most nights, and even when they don't win, they're 5-19. There's still positive things that you can take from it. And Bol Bol is the one that everybody's talking about. It's shocking how good Bol Bol has become. Just an impressive player all around. There's so much to be happy with on the team. That Jamal Mosley puts his guys most nights into a position to succeed, and it's kind of the anti-Houston, where you can still be terrible, be one of the worst teams in the league, but show growth on a nightly basis. So I really just wanted to shout them out. A quick one. We don't need to dive too deep into them. You guys can, whatever you think about Orlando, I'm curious, but this is a positive tank job if there was one, in my opinion, this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like when it comes to the Orlando Magic, obviously, I think losing is probably is going to happen a little bit more often than not because they have such a young team. They obviously have young players, and they're going to be very inexperienced in those kind of clutch and pressure moments and situations. I know that they have some good talent there, which makes me think that they should start looking to trade guys like Terrence Ross. I think that that's something 100%. That they should definitely look into.
Lakers, please.
Well, Anthony, I'd just move a bunch of their guards. I don't think any of those guards are long-term guys for them. Other than Suggs, I'd keep Suggs.
Yeah.
Suggs. I mean, RJ Hampton. Like those summer league games still haunt me to this day. Like I still remember them vividly of him just taking some crazy shots.
Oh my gosh, he's frustrating.
And so he's a guy that I'm like a little just like, maybe someone to move off of. But I think the Magic will be just fine. I think, like you said, Pete, they are a team that is starting to develop, starting to grow, and really emphasizing their culture, and is a fun team to watch. Obviously, like you said, the injuries played a huge factor into it. Your number one option, who's a rookie, gets hurt, and that's just the unfortunate part about injuries in the league. But I'm excited to see where this team goes moving forward with Paolo kind of getting back into healthiness, and also seeing what Franz Wagner can do with him, and also Bol Bol, and seeing if let's see if Bol Bol can become a huge X factor piece for the Orlando Magic coming in the near future. I'm excited for this team.
Yeah, they're so much fun to watch. I watch every single game just because of the way they play. They're up and down. They play defense and they're long. They are a completely different team without Wendell Carter Jr. though. Like they on
He's
both
important to
ends,
them.
very important. He anchors their defense and he opens up their offense with his shooting and his underrated passing. I would say if I was the Magic, I would move Jonathan Isaac, Cole
Bamba.
Anthony, Bamba. Yeah, free Bamba. Bamba's actually a good player.
Yeah, he
And-
needs to go to a team. That's a Lakers player right there.
Yeah.
They could use him. If any team was really smart too, the Nets would look at Bamba too. He would be so
Oh my
good
God,
for
they
them.
need him. They should just throw the pick for him, honestly.
Give it to him. He'd be perfect
Yeah.
for their team. He can shoot. He can play defense. He is honestly probably the biggest disservice of any player on their team right now. But it's just because they have so many big men.
Yeah, I agree. I love the Magic. Fun team to watch.
Yeah.
Houston should take a page out of their notebook.
Yeah.
I agree.
We'll see what happens. But people, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the power rankings? Do you guys agree with our statements that we've said about a couple of these teams? I know that there's a lot more teams that we could have talked about. Obviously, the Celtics are number one. We could have talked about them. But it's kind of fun talking about the teams that don't normally get talked about, like the Orlando Magic, like the Houston Rockets, like Lakers actually get talked about a lot. Chicago is another team. And the Hawks, obviously, as well. So let us know in the comment section down below. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? Do you agree with our assessment of these teams? Let us know in the comment section down below. And also remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, all this stuff helps out the algorithm of The Charge and lets you guys know that you enjoy watching us on a night and night out basis and enjoy our takes. So please continuing to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. All right, Pete. Is it time? Time to get on to the final segment.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So obviously, you guys, we talked about it. The biggest thing that came out of this topic was the fact that we talked about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and talking about kind of the worst trades in the last 10 years of the NBA and really going into a big in-depth detail about some of these trades. So Pete, I'll kind of have you introduce maybe a little bit more of this topic, but let's how are we doing this?
I have some good ones together too. I think we should credit some good trades as well. But yeah, we were talking last week about the Paul George trade to the Clippers in terms of getting Kawhi and then giving everything you have, 4 or 5 first round. I think it was 5 first round picks. We found out with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Danilo Gallinari, I believe, to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Paul George. Sneakily, I would argue that's one of the worst trades in the last few years, even though Paul George is a good player. But yeah, I don't know, Brad, if you're prepared for this, but say we each introduce a good trade, bad trade. I think we should start with bad trades because that's kind of the point of the topic. But we could also do some good ones if you guys have any in mind. And I could start off if you guys want.
Sure, go ahead, man.
Let's do the obvious one. We have talked about this a lot on this channel. Something that does not get talked about enough in the mainstream NBA is the Nikola Vucevic trade to the Chicago Bulls. Sneakily, one of the worst trades ever in NBA history as far as how impactful it's going to be long term for both teams. Orlando Magic are going to benefit greatly. Let me read the trade first. Let me see where it is. I wish I had this pulled up and was more prepared. I apologize. And of course, this website has no organizational structure to it. All right, here we go. So this is what the trade was. Orlando Magic traded Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu to the Chicago Bulls in exchange for Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and 2 first-round picks. One of those first-round picks is in 2023, so it hasn't actually happened yet. And the other one was the trade the pick that ended up being Franz Wagner. Trade is atrocious. First of all, Vucevic has literally not done anything to be worth even one of the things he was traded for, right? Like Franz Wagner for Vucevic 1-for-1 is an awful trade. Vucevic for Wendell Carter Jr., pretty awful trade. I would even argue, and I know they don't have Otter Porter Jr. Even Otto Porter Jr. has had more success in the last year than Vucevic has. He won a championship with the Warriors.
And he was a key
crazy
piece.
to say. He was a key piece on that team. Very important to the Warriors winning that championship. He was an afterthought in the trade. That is genuinely one of the worst trades probably of all time, because the Magic are going to be a much better team for a long time because of it, and the Bulls kind of crippled themselves for the next few years because of it. That is that the worst trade, you guys? Do you think there's anything worse that we're going to talk about? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
We'll have to come back to that one, but that one's pretty rough.
it's one of the worst ones for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yes, they did. It's awesome. Yeah, that's disgusting. I forgot about that one. I actually forgot about Gerald Wallace. I used to love playing with him in UK back in the day.
He was a beast.
Fun player to watch. What about you, Brad? What you got?
How about the Rudy Gobert trade? Shaping up
Okay,
to
I knew this was coming up.
It's fresh on my mind. I watched the T-Wolves yesterday. Did you guys see him get ejected for kicking Kenrich Williams?
Did see that. That was something.
It was pretty bad. But yeah,
that's frustrating situation for everybody involved. That is for sure.
Jeremy. Okay,
we're good now.
Okay. Yeah, they're actually a better team without Rudy Gobert on the court. They're supposed to be a top 10 defense. That's why they traded for him, was to anchor their defense. But it's actually ruined their defense because their transition defense is like bottom in the league. And that's not all on Rudy. Cat is a part of that too. But, that was what you traded for. You traded for this big man who was supposed to be a defensive bolster, and your team is actually better without him. All those picks thrown out the window. Danny Ainge is, I just got to clap. They're a better team without Rudy too.
Yeah, that trade is so crazy, because one thing I think is getting under talked about with this one is just how little prepared they were to integrate Rudy Gobert into their team. There's no planning. Like, it's almost like they haven't watched him play before this season, because they don't do any of the things that he was good at in Utah. It's pretty strange. He doesn't get the ball in pick and rolls hardly ever. What is that? You guys notice that?
Ant-Man doesn't like to pass.
Doesn't he? He especially does not like to pass to Rudy.
Yeah.
He hates Rudy.
Yeah.
It is wild how, because I saw a stat that was showing, I think Rudy would get the ball in pick and rolls and drive to the basket. I think it was like 6 or 7 times, somewhere between 6 and 7 times with Utah on average over the last few years. He's down to like 2.5 or 3 this season. That's crazy. That's a crazy drop off, because that's literally the only thing he's good at on offense. That's the only thing he can do. So why did you trade for him if you weren't going to integrate that into your game at all? I don't get it. I don't get it, because a big part of this too is they went and paid a crazy amount of money for their general manager, who has been very good in Denver, Tim Connolly, before this season too. So went and got Tim Connolly on a crazy contract for a GM. And then the first thing he did was this huge freaking move for Rudy Gobert that has been one of the worst things we've seen in years too. This is a disaster. I've never been more wrong about anything in the moment in my entire life as far as basketball is concerned. I've never been more wrong. Also, I have to blame just the structure of this team for being wrong. I didn't think they were gonna not understand who Rudy was as much as this, because I don't get it. There was a play the other night. Did you guys see that play before Cat got hurt where they had Rudy guarding somebody out on the perimeter, and then he pulled back. Cat and him, the ball went back out to the perimeter, and Cat and Rudy literally just ran straight into each other because they had no clue where the other person was.
I saw that.
And it was just like, these dudes don't speak to each other on or off the court. It's so clear when they play.
The chemistry is terrible.
It's negative 100 on a scale of chemistry. Like, it would break 2K's chemistry system. They would in simulation. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I have another bad one before we switch to good ones. This is one that I really think gets under talked about again, and that's the Kyrie to the Celtics trade.
Oh, they're going to talk about the Andrea Bargnani.
It's a bad
Next
one
trade.
too. But Kyrie to the Celtics trade is sneakily one of the worst trades for both teams in NBA history too, because both teams were negatively impacted to an extent they couldn't recover for a couple years afterwards. Don't need to dive into Kyrie too deep, the Boston tenure with him, but we all know that went very poorly for everybody involved. The Cavaliers just as poor. I mean, people roasted the Cavs for the trade at the time. They deserved it, but the trade is even worse now when you think of the fact that they were coming off a championship the year before, right? It's Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, 2018 first round pick and 2020 second round pick to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't know if any of those picks even equate to anything for Cleveland. What did they get? Got Larry Nance Jr. and Rodney Hood. Like, everything. Everything is awful. So yeah, that trade is really, really bad. I don't get it at all in retrospect. What were they thinking? And the funny part is that was David Griffin at the time, Cleveland's general manager, I believe. Was it Kobe Altman already? I think that was like the last thing that David.
I think
Griffin
it was David Griffin. Yeah.
And now he's created one of the best rosters in basketball in New Orleans. So how the times change, because I really thought David Griffin was a brain dead idiot after that trade at the time.
Yeah. A couple more trades that I kind of want to mention. I think another one too is the Thunder trading away James Harden for Kevin Martin and Jeremy Lamb.
Yes.
I think that's one that definitely gets talked. That doesn't get talked about as much in terms of. Well, I guess it does get talked about because people are wondering if they could have continued that successful run with all three guys. Another one, too, I think, is the Orlando Magic trading Oladipo Ilyasova and the rights to Sabonis for Serge Ibaka. I think that's another
Oh, my goodness.
That's another one that gets under talked about. I mean, obviously, the Orlando Magic, they're fun now. They're exciting to watch now. But, when they had some good pieces that they could have kind of built around and developed, they decided to go a different way and went for Ibaka.
Yeah, Serge Ibaka. That's something, man. That's really bad too. Wow. Ed, what about you? Any more bad ones? You got any big ones that are coming to mind?
Shout out to my Lakers for trading, their entire championship roster minus Trez for Russell Westbrook. Yeah, that trade. I mean, we see the effects of it to this day. So, Kuz is balling out on the Wizards. KCP is a starter with the Nuggets. They traded a first round pick for Russ. That is crazy. They traded all those players and a first round pick, and you couldn't get any of that back for Russ straight up now. So
that doesn't make any sense. That didn't make sense in the moment at the time because Westbrook had already shown signs of not being the same guy anymore. But yeah, that's
even
wild.
fit the team. Like, he doesn't even fit like how you were saying earlier that I forget who it was, but somebody maximizes their players. Or how the Bucks maximize Giannis. You're not maximizing LeBron by trading for Russell Westbrook. He needs the ball in his hands, and he can't shoot. So what are you doing?
Yeah, and under no circumstances is that. I mean, what? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's not even any way to explain it in your mind. Even at the time, it was crazy. Good one. I have a good one for you guys. Some really great draft day trades in the last few years.
Hmm.
I think one that sticks out in really recent memory was the Grizzlies getting Desmond Bain.
Yep.
Bernie, I think that hurts you a little bit because that was the Celtics pick, I believe. Is it the Celtics pick? It was in a three-way deal.
Yeah.
I believe that what it ended up being was a swap where it was 2 second-round picks and Mario Hezonja turned into Desmond Bain for Memphis, which that is wild. Mario Hezonja did not belong in the NBA at the time. He's not in the NBA now. He probably never will be. And 2 second-round picks that who knows what they turned into. But Desmond Bain has been – he was healthy this season. He was one of the best 2 guards in the entire league, and he's going to be for a long time. He's still a very young guy. So credit to Memphis because they really have killed the draft for a long time, but that was just an excellent trade in general.
Yeah.
Great for them. Do you have any good ones that come to mind besides that? Got some more too.
I'm trying to think of
I think
like
Memphis is really good in the draft. They did the same thing with I want to say it was Brandon Clark. He was OKC's pick, and they traded back for that pick, and then took Brandon Clark.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're the Memphis Grizzlies, that's how you have to build your roster. I mean, the Thunder obviously are taking notes now, but like, and they have been for a while, but like the Grizzlies do a great job of like going from like iteration to iteration, right? We talked about the grindhouse with Zach Randolph, Conley, and those guys, and how it transitioned now into John Morant, Triple J, and Desmond Bain, obviously, and just like and you know Kyle Anderson when he was there. Like it really they did a great job of transitioning, and so you know they're definitely one of those teams. I think another trade that kind of comes to mind for me, whether maybe it's negative, maybe it's positive, but it was obviously the Chris Paul trade that got nixed and then ended up going to the Clippers. That one to me kind of brings back memories of just the league not wanting Chris Paul on the Lakers and, you know, trying to force the Clippers to be good. And so I think that's kind of where I'm at with that one. I think at the end of the day,
Kardashian curse.
Kardashian curse. I think at the end of the day, I would have tried to, I don't know. I think he probably would have been better on the Lakers, but you know, that's just.
I mean, at the time, yeah, they definitely would have been because he would have been joining. It was Powell and Kobe at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that team would have won a championship at the time for sure. That would have solved a lot of Kobe's late career problems. I think to have a guy like Chris Paul around. I think that gets talked enough about just because, you know, RIP love Kobe heartedly as a fan, but there's a lot of issues down the stretch in his career that will not get talked about just because of things that happened, obviously, right? I don't want to get too deep on that. A really good one, not to cut you off, Brad, if you had one in mind, but this one is crazy, is the Bucks getting Chris Middleton when they got him and what they gave up. That trade basically amounted to Chris Middleton being an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
The trade was actually, it was really Brandon Jennings for Brandon Knight at the time, which is wild to think about. 2 guys not in the league anymore that were very hyped in their early stages of their career, but now it's crazy. Chris Middleton, all-star, just came back, champion. That is a very good trade. That was really awesome, like scouting by them, because Chris Middleton had shown some signs in Detroit that he had something deeper than what he was able to give them because he was a young guy. I think Chris Middleton was a 2nd-round pick, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
Just an excellent trade in the long-term development of grabbing a guy like that, and you know him being basically one of the best fits you could have next to a guy like Giannis too. And didn't know that at the time, but great trade in retrospect. That was a huge win for them, regardless of Brandon Knight turning into anything for them at all. His biggest highlight as a Milwaukee Buck might be getting like one of his big 3 like monster dunks on his head in his career. I don't remember which one.
I think it was a missed layup for game, actually.
Yeah, was he? I think he was still on Detroit when
he was on Detroit when he got baptized. Yes.
Because remember, he has like 2 or 3 of the biggest dunk highlights in the last 25 years are on Brandon Knight, and I think one of them was when he was in Milwaukee. But shout out Brandon Jennings. I'll never forget that 50-point game he had in his rookie season I think it was against Cleveland too. I was mind blown when I was a kid.
And then he had a 20-20 game on the Pistons. 20 points, 20 assists.
Yeah, he did. was one of the weirdest flameouts I've seen in a long time because he really looked like he had it for a long. He was going to have it. Him and Tyreek Evans. I thought the two of them. Thought they were the guys. They were going to be very good for a long time, and boy was I wrong.
Yeah, they tricked me too.
We're sad. Brad, what about you? Got any good ones?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, people talk about this one, but the Cavs getting Kevin Love in 2014. Cavs got K Love, and Minnesota got Anthony Bennett, which was a steal for the Cavs. They got the pick that turned into Andrew Wiggins, and then they got Thad Young. And Philly was involved in this, and they got Alexei Shved, who was nice on that Timberwolves team, Luke Mbah a Moute, and a first-round pick from the Cavs. We all saw what Kevin Love did, helped them win a championship, locked up Steph for like 10 seconds. It was amazing.
Needed it.
Needed that. And yeah, he was a huge piece for those Cavs team, and he's still on the team now, being a good vet. So yeah, that trade is a little underrated, actually.
That trade is pretty underrated. That's a good one, actually. Such a huge milestone trade in the 2010s decade too, like how that changed so much of players' careers. It's pretty crazy.
Seriously, if he never comes, we'd be talking about Kyrie especially in a different way.
Yeah, and I mean, what would Wiggins' career look like too? You know, would he have had the same career trajectory that he's had? You know, this late career. It's not even late. He's still so young, but in terms of how long he's been in the league, a late career renaissance for him. Would he even be having this if he hadn't played the way he did in Minnesota, you know?
Mm-hmm,
I honestly think he would have been a way better player if he had gotten to play with LeBron early on, you know? He probably would have learned a lot and been a much better player if he had learned from him from the get-go.
Yeah, he would have learned winning basketball right away instead of having to play with the Warriors years later.
Yeah. One that I kind of want to talk about is the Spurs trade. Kawhi Leonard to the Raptors, obviously leading to their championship. Obviously Kawhi Leonard made a huge impact on that move. I understand there were injuries in that last season for the Warriors, and that's the reason why they lost. But I think this trade also kind of helped a little bit with the Spurs having just a little bit of a, just some decent pieces. I would say, Jakob Poeltl, Keldon Johnson. Also, little small pieces that, could potentially add up. We'll see what the Spurs do this next coming season, because that's really what's going to shape up what happens. But yeah, I mean, you trade for a championship for the Raptors, Masai Ujiri, obviously masterclass. And so, I have to bring that trade up because it definitely put Toronto back on the map when a lot of people just, recognize them for their uniforms.
That's pretty much it. Their uniforms and old Vince Carter highlights.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
That was literally what people thought about Toronto, and being owned by LeBron too. Yeah, that one's crazy because, I mean, one thing that's interesting with this is that was 2018, right? That's 4 years ago.
Yeah.
They had kept Kawhi, would have just been good enough to be solid, but probably never championship contenders for that stretch of time. And I would put them as by far the leading, and I know that the odds are what they are when it comes to the lottery, but they are by far the leading candidate for me to get Wembanyama as far as tanking it out and being a smart tanking team with more moves to make in terms of getting worse as the season goes on. So I would say if you get off of Kawhi in 2018 and 4 years later, 5 years later, probably at the time it happens, you end up with Wembanyama. If that happens, get your new Tim Duncan. Maybe it worked out for the best for everybody, but that's a wait and see. Here's a good one. Here's a really good one, because you could look at it as bad trade for both teams the way it ended up playing out. You could look at it as a really good trade for one team and really bad for the other. It's definitely bad for the Pistons, but the Blake Griffin trade, wowie, oh wow, that is so bad. Here's the details. Blake Griffin, Willie Reed, Bryce Johnson to the Detroit Pistons. This is immediately after Blake Griffin signed that mega contract with the Clippers. Clippers ended up with Tobias Harris, Avery Bradley, Boban, 2018 first-round pick, 2019 second-round pick, and that 2019 second-round pick and the first-round pick ended up turning into Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which Mind you, they didn't end up keeping him, so that's why I said this could be a bad trade too, because I said that the Paul George trade was bad, but they're not connected. So they are connected, but they're not. You don't have to stick them together necessarily.
I got you.
But wow, what a terrible trade. The reason I bring this one up because I think that that trade is the official death of coach GM hybrid role. I don't think there's going to be a team that gives a Stan Van Gundy the power to do something like that when he's on the last little stretch of holding on to his job as a head coach and a GM. That just shows how negatively impactful leaving somebody in that do or die type of scenario with all the keys to make big decisions can be. Like, that's such a dangerous place to be in. And man,
wasn't Doc in that same position when they made that trade too? Wasn't he president and coach?
Was, yeah.
That's crazy.
Terrible. I mean, just really terrible all around. But I mean, we saw from just the fact that they got off of that Blake contract when they did is such a huge win, because it was clearly too much for where his career was kind of heading at the time. It wasn't obvious enough that everybody was like, what are you doing? There was still people who were like, you're getting Blake Griffin, you're getting an all NBA player, but yeah, that was bad. That was so bad. We saw, I mean, the Pistons have literally been one of worst teams in the league ever since that happened. So already were one of the worst teams in the league, but they've been significantly worse since.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just happy that right now the Pistons have they have some talent now, and they're obviously still developing some of their guys. Obviously, Cade Cunningham out. We'll see how long he's out for.
Killian Hayes looks good though.
Killian Hayes he's looking better.
My guy, Killian, starting to take back my take back of how much I liked Killian. He's been looking super nice lately.
Yeah, good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, again, into his skill sets a lot more than he has in earlier parts of his career. Such a good defender, good passer. Just shooting the ball actually now.
Yeah.
Do we have any more trades we want to talk about? Anything else that comes to mind for you guys?
Yeah, I have a good win-win for both teams, actually.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about any win-wins. Let's hear it.
It's the AD trade. I would say that was a win-win. The Lakers won a ring, and the Pelicans, they got Brandon Ingram. They ended up getting CJ McCollum because one of those picks was traded out. So Jackson Hayes, one of the picks turned into Herbert Jones, and Dyson Daniels, who hasn't played a lot but looks like a promising young player, and Garrett Temple, who was a throw-in. But that trade, I would say that's a win-win.
I think that's a huge win-win in terms of you want to win a championship, and the Pelicans have positioned themselves to win one in the future for sure. They're really set up now for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I still think they're a good dark horse for this season. Like, if they can put it together towards the end, they have something.
Yeah, we should have talked about them in the power rankings earlier, because I think they were up in the top 5 or 6. They definitely belong to be there. They're incredibly good.
For sure.
Yeah. Bernie, any win-wins that come to mind?
No, I think that's kind of it for me in terms of trades. I know that there's a lot more that we probably could have talked about. I
got one more good one. I got a good win-win.
Okay.
The Paul George trade to KC. In that trade, it was one of the very few no picks involved trades in the last, honestly, pretty significant stretch of time. That is mostly what people are looking for in the last, in the 21st century as far as trades are concerned. But it was Paul George to OKC for Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. Huge trade for both teams in terms of how it's played out. Mind you, it looked a lot better a couple years ago with the Oladipo situation in Indiana. I would argue, even if you took it from the biggest viewpoint possible, they have Tyrese Halliburton now because of this trade, because they got Sabonis. Tyrese Halliburton is going to be an All-NBA player in the near future. He might be one this season if he keeps it up. I would trade Paul George right now for Tyrese Halliburton. Mind you, that's not what this trade was when it happened, but they still ended up with Paul George. They had an okay stretch in OKC with him and ended up turning into a huge trade for them with him. They got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So both of these teams from this one trade benefited in the moment and long term because they both ended up with their guards of the future, all NBA potential players from this exact one of a crux of a moment in 2017. That's a really good trade long term, how it impacted both of those franchises.
One last trade that I kind of want to mention is, I want to get your guys' opinion on this one. I know this one just happened last year, but the James Harden for Ben Simmons trade. I know that one has flipped a lot of people the last couple of years. I know that we talked about, oh, well, the Nets lost that one, or hey, the 76ers lost this one. I mean, let's settle it now for once and for all. Who won or lost that trade?
Lose. That's what I'm going with.
That's a cop out, Brad. I need a conviction. I need conviction here.
I mean, if you look at it from a basketball standpoint, like Harden has been playing better basketball than Ben, but it doesn't really look like Embiid likes to play with Harden. Like their chemistry is terrible, honestly, watching them play. And then the style of play that the team is playing because they traded for Harden isn't team basketball. It's, more Harden ball and then kind of Embiid ball.
Yeah.
And then the Ben thing, Ben's always injured. And when he's on the court, he's not the same version that he was in Philly. So it's kind of just like, I guess you could say it's a win-win by that standard. I think they even out, but it's really, I don't think either team necessarily won.
I don't know. I'd push back. I think Philly won huge on this one. I think they won in a big way because if anybody knew that this was as broken as Ben is,
he's been better though. He put a string of good games together.
Been a little bit better, but he's hurt again. He's hurt again and again.
So it's Harden though.
You got to see it. You got to see like an extended stretch of him actually holding it together because still haven't seen Ben do anything in a moment that's big. Like even the way that it ended up going when they went to go play Philly again, right? Back in Philadelphia for the first time for Ben. I mean, that game went horrifically bad for the Nets. I think Harden, Embiid, and Maxey were out, and they still got smoked by Philly when that game happened.
Shout out to Tobias.
Shout out to Tobias Harris. He put them on his back time that game. But I would just put it like this. Philly was so clearly done with Ben. Ben so clearly done with Philly. And Ben was just not this. He has not been anywhere near what he was before the infamous pass out of the dunk situation against the Hawks. Even though Harden is not the same guy as he was, that's who Daryl Morey wanted. Under no circumstances, if they knew what Ben was, would they have been able to get James Harden with him. So I would say just on paper in terms of getting value out of somebody that didn't have much, really finessed the holy hell out of the Nets in that situation. Because realistically, in retrospect, I think Brooklyn would much rather have traded Kyrie, than Harden. Like Harden and Kevin Durant together would have been a much better pairing, even now, I think, than what Kyrie and Durant are. So
that's a good point.
That maybe is just my own personal opinion of Kyrie coloring this trade a little bit, but I do think that Philly won in a big way because even compromised Harden, even Harden not being who he was in Houston, maybe he'll never get there again. He's still way better than what Ben Simmons gives you. Like it's pretty night and day, I would say. It's really the only thing you could even say for Brooklyn to feel a little bit better about it is the role players you got out of the situation. And even them, they haven't added all that much when it matters either because Seth Curry was compromised in the playoffs last season. And I think he's back and playing okay, right? He's back and healthy right now. He's been all right, but still not like a huge impact. I think this is still wait and see to a certain extent. I still think you got to hold your breath just a little bit on dealing the deal. What do you think, Bernie? You said that was a cop-out to say lose-lose because kind of is, but it might be a lose-lose.
I mean, it probably, like, fairly, it's probably a lose-lose, but I think the Nets lost this one, man.
It's pretty tough.
Like, James Harden, I felt like, was playing pretty good basketball for them. And, I think that kind of fit the scheme and the mold that they were in. And, probably the reason why Durant wanted him there. And then all of a sudden, I just feel like the animosity, maybe not animosity, but the two players, Kyrie Irving and James Harden, just I felt like they never clicked, and I think that's the reason why Harden wanted out, is because I feel like there's some tension between Kyrie Irving and James Harden for whatever reason. I'm sure if we ever get a 30 for 30 on this basketball team, it'll be a fun one to watch, and it'll be interesting to see what
Should be in
happens.
movie theaters when it happens.
And so, to me, I just think the Brooklyn Nets lost because they got rid of someone who, again, wasn't the same scorer that he was in Houston, but he was still moving the rock. He still kind of fit that point guard mold, and kind of, I felt like Kyrie Irving off ball worked perfectly. And so, to me, like, getting rid of that, even for Ben Simmons, who obviously plays great defense, does a lot of the things that you like, I think it hurt the Nets right now, because I mean, as much as Ben Simmons is a defensive force, as much as he does a lot of those things, is he help? I don't think he's helping their team defense. He's not helping their team rebounding. And if you can't do both those things in this league, and you're giving up more opportunity, like this league and just basketball in general is a game of possessions. Like, how many more possessions can you get than the other team? And if you can't get more possessions than the other team by creating second chance opportunities, or even well, to me, it's like creating second chance opportunities, or, rebounding the ball and getting it to your guys. Like, you're giving more possessions to the other team, and when they get more possessions, that means they get better looks, they get better shots. That's the reason why the Bucks won that series those years ago, when Kevin Durant's tippy toes was on the 3-point line. Like, to me, it wasn't that shot that was really it. It was the second chance opportunities that they gave up.
Yeah. Well, and realistically too, I mean, I would just package all of the trades they've made in their KD Kyrie tenure as part of this, and kind of, or a sign of just how not prepared they were to set up a larger infrastructure of good players, right? Like, it was all focused in. I don't want to go into the death of the super team thing again, but they really did it because of what they did with all these trades. Like, giving Jared Allen away, right? Like, that's such a bad trade in retrospect. He's the perfect player for what they need right now. They basically gave him away at the time. They just kept thinking, we can replace this with our stars. We can do this. And the thing with Ben is, how much did we hear this dude has no value? What are you going to trade him for, when he was just sitting at home when he was still on Philly? It was constant. And all Daryl Morey had to do was sit and wait. He ended up with a guy who's been an MVP before. Like, that's just poor understanding of the market, no matter how you shake it, because one way or the other, Ben was not going to help you back then either. And that, we talked about that too at the time, Bernie. Like, why are you going to trade for this guy that just had the biggest breakdown in a pressure situation that we've seen in the 21st century, and then put him in a pressure egg of, even more craziness in Brooklyn, and think he's going to give you something going into the playoffs last year? Like, that was flawed logic all around. Because even if Ben came back and was who he was in Philly, it still wouldn't have put you ahead of where you were with James Harden. So I think it's definitely a loss for the Nets as of right now, because there's no winning a perspective from them.
That's fair. As a Harden fantasy owner, I will say that, yeah, I agree on the court. They won the trade because Harden is like a top 2 shooting guard and he's unstoppable. But we'll have to wait and see how it goes in the playoffs, because we all know his history there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're counting just playoff, if it was a metric of playoff success versus playoff success, it's one of the biggest loses of all time, because it hasn't amounted to anything, and they're 2 of the biggest playoff chokers we've seen in the last decade. So, huge out. Always,
Always, my guys.
Hopefully, we can do it more starting soon. I would like that.